In this video, I'm going to discuss the updated Louisiana drug laws. Specifically, I'll talk about the most common drugs that are possessed illegally and the penalties for illegal possession and distribution of those drugs. Just keep in mind that every drug possession case is different. The penalties you'll see do not consider the criminal record of the defendant or other aggravating and mitigating factors of the case. Alprazolam is a Schedule IV drug, also known as Xanax, because Xanax is the brand name for Alprazolam. So the penalties for illegal possession of Alprazolam are going to be 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor in prison. And so what that means is that if you're convicted of possession of Xanax, then you're looking at a possible prison time that is probatable, depending on your circumstances, for 1 to 5 years. Also, the fine is up to $5,000 if it can be proven that you are in possession with intent to distribute, which is going to be usually done if if you're in possession of lots of pills, maybe more than just personal use, then you're looking at possession with intent to distribute. Then there's also distribution of Xanax as well. So the penalties are amped up to 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $15,000. Amphetamine is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. The most common amphetamine that we see in the criminal court system is Adderall. So Adderall is a prescribed drug, usually for ADHD. What happens is people get prescribed the drugs and then they'll go sell it or give it to their friends or to other people, and that's actually distribution of amphetamine. So when we start here, we've got possession of amphetamine of less than 2 grams. The penalty is 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor. It is probatable depending on your circumstances. It carries a fine of up to $5,000. If you're in possession of amphetamine in between 2 grams and less than 28 grams, then you're looking at 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If you possess more or equal to 28 grams, it's automatically considered possession with intent to distribute, which then you're looking at 1 to 20 years at hard labor. If you possess less than 28 grams, but there are still other facts that show that you are possessing it to distribute the drug, then you're looking at 1 to 10 years. So you could still even possess less than 28 grams of Adderall or amphetamine and still be charged with possession with intent to distribute, depending on the facts. Carisoprodol is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. The most common brand name is Soma. Soma is what it's commonly referred to as. Possession of Carisoprodol of less than 2 grams carries 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor. So it is a felony charge, and it carries a fine of up to $5,000. If you're in illegal possession of Carisoprodol in between 2 and 28 grams, then you're looking at 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If you're in possession of more or equal to 28 grams, then you're looking at possession with intent to distribute. So the law basically says because you possess such a large amount, then it automatically is amped up to possession with intent to distribute. If you're accused of distributing the pills, then you're looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $50,000. If you're accused of distributing or accused of being in possession with intent to distribute 28 grams or more, then you're looking at 1 to 20 years at hard labor and a fine of $50,000. Cocaine is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana, also known as crack, rock, white, Charlie. It's very popular. There are a lot of arrests, a lot of criminal cases for possession with intent to distribute, and distribution of cocaine in Louisiana. So let's talk about some of the penalties here. If you are in illegal possession of cocaine, then you're looking at 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor if the amount that you have is less than 2 grams. If you're in illegal possession of in between 2 and less than 28 grams, then you're looking at 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor and a fine up to $5,000. If you're in possession of 28 grams or more of cocaine, then the law says that it automatically becomes possession with intent to distribute cocaine. That's important because then the penalties go up. So if you're in possession with intent to distribute of 28 grams or more, then you're looking at 1 to 20 years at hard labor. You could still possess less than 28 grams and be charged with possession with intent to distribute cocaine if there are facts present to show that you actually had that amount to distribute to somebody else. So you could have 2 grams of cocaine and get charged with possession with intent to distribute if there's other facts present to show you were trying to sell it or that's what you did. Then you're looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor. Then you also have production or manufacturing of cocaine. You'll pretty much see this when cocaine base is alleged to be possessed. Then you're looking at 10 to 30 years at hard labor. And 10 years is without benefit of probation or parole. So that's a very serious charge. Codeine is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. It is also known as drink, lean, or syrup when it's mixed with promethazine. Codeine is typically used to treat mild and moderate pain and incontinence. So let's talk about the penalties here. So possession of codeine of less than 2 grams carries a penalty of 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. This is a felony. If you're accused of possessing 2 to 28 grams of codeine, then you're looking at 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor. If you are accused of possessing 28 grams or more, then it's automatically possession with intent to distribute, which amps up the penalties to 1 to 10 years in prison or 1 to 20 based on how much codeine you're alleged to have. So if you're alleged to have 28 grams or more, then you're looking at 1 to 20. You could still have less than 28 grams and get charged with possession with intent to distribute, and that's why you'd be looking at 1 to 10. Diazepam is a Schedule IV drug in Louisiana. Diazepam is also known as Valium. Valium is the brand name for diazepam. It is a prescription benzodiazepine that produces a calming effect. It's commonly used to treat a range of conditions including anxiety, alcohol withdrawal syndrome, muscle spasms, seizures, etc. It is one of the highest selling medications in the United States. Possession of diazepam is a felony. It carries a sentencing range of 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If you're accused of distributing or possessing with intent to distribute diazepam, then you're looking at a sentencing range of 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $15,000. Ecstasy or MDMA is a Schedule I drug. It's also known as X, Molly, Tabs. MDMA is an abbreviation for the technical term, which is methylene dioxymethamphetamine. Illegal possession of ecstasy or MDMA is a felony charge in Louisiana. So if you are accused of possessing less than 2 grams, then you're looking at 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor. If you're in illegal possession of 2 to 28 grams, then you're looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor. If you are in possession of 28 grams or more, then it becomes a possession with intent to distribute. And this is important because then the sentencing ranges go up. So as you can see down here, distribution or possession with intent to distribute, if you have less than 28 grams, carries a sentencing range of 1 to 10 years. And if you have more or equal to 28 grams, then you're looking at 1 to 20 years. Fentanyl is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. It is also known as China White, China Girl, Fentanyl is a very powerful synthetic opioid prescribed for the control of extreme pain and is used as anesthesia. It's gained notoriety as an additive or substitute for heroin. It's often mixed into the heroin, which has led to thousands of overdose deaths in the United States. It's a very serious drug that is actually it's a synthetic drug that's produced and manufactured by drug companies. So let's look at the penalties for illegal possession of fentanyl. For illegal possession of fentanyl under 2 grams, the sentencing range is 2 to 4 years with or without hard labor. In between 2 and 28 grams, you're looking at 2 to 10 years with or without hard labor. And if the defendant is accused of possessing 28 grams or more of fentanyl illegally, then the charge becomes possession with intent to distribute fentanyl, which then the sentencing range is 5 to 40, just as distribution of fentanyl is 5 to 40 years at hard labor. And the fine is up to $50,000. Flunitrazepam is a Schedule IV drug in Louisiana. It is also known as roofies or Rohypnol. Rohypnol is the brand name of flunitrazepam. Rohypnol is an intermediate benzodiazepine with a strong hypnotic effect that is prescribed in some countries for severe cases of insomnia and sometimes as an anesthetic. It is known to induce retrograde amnesia. Rohypnol or roofies has gained notoriety as a date rape drug, though its reported use in such cases in the U.S. are actually very limited. The manufacturer has reformulated the drug by reducing the dosage and adding a blue colorant to aid in detection in drinks. The drug has never been marketed in the U.S. and it's been removed from most major European markets. So let's talk about the penalties for illegal possession of flunitrazepam or Rohypnol. It is a felony offense, punishable by 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If you're accused of distributing roofies or possession with intent to distribute, then you're looking at 1 to 20 years in prison with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $50,000. GHB is a Schedule I drug in Louisiana. It is also known as Liquid X, Lollipops, G, and the formal name for it is gamma hydroxybutyric acid. GHB is a depressant and intoxicant that affects the central nervous system. Although it's a naturally occurring transmitter, it is easily synthesized at home and became a popular rave drug in the 1990s. It has limited medical uses, and being colorless and odorless, it became notorious as a date rape drug. Let's talk about the penalties for GHB. So possession of less than 2 grams of GHB is a felony offense in Louisiana, carries up to 2 years in prison with a fine of up to $5,000. If you possess illegally in between 2 and 28 grams of GHB, then you're looking at 1 to 10 years. If you possess illegally 28 grams or more of GHB, then it's considered possession with intent to distribute, and now you're looking at either 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 years in prison, depending on how much you have. So you could still get charged with possession with intent to distribute GHB if you have less than 28 grams, if there are supporting facts that you were possessing it with intent to distribute. This is something that the prosecutor has to try to prove. If you're charged with distribution or possession with intent to distribute of 28 grams or over, then you're looking at 1 to 20 years at hard labor and a fine of up to $50,000. Heroin is a Schedule I drug in Louisiana. Heroin is also known as junk, smack, horse, H, Mr. Brownstone. It is an extremely powerful and highly addictive recreational drug that is synthesized from opium. It has some approved medical uses in the UK and other countries, but none in the United States. Heroin is responsible for thousands of overdose deaths in the United States, especially in recent years. So let's discuss the penalties for illegal possession of heroin. Illegal possession of heroin of less than 2 grams carries a sentencing range of 2 to 4 years with or without hard labor. This is probatable depending on the situation, considering the defendant's prior criminal record and other factors surrounding the case. Possession of heroin in between 2 and 28 grams carries a sentencing range of 2 to 10 years with or without hard labor. Possession of heroin of 28 grams or more shall be considered possession with intent to distribute, which carries much more tougher penalties, including 5 to 40 years at hard labor and a fine of up to $50,000. Distribution of heroin also carries the penalty of 5 to 40 years at hard labor. Hydrocodone is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. It is also known as Lortab, Vicodin, Hydro. Lortab and Vicodins are the brand name for hydrocodone. It is a semi-synthetic opioid that is commonly prescribed in pill form. Let's discuss the penalties for illegal possession of hydrocodone. If the defendant is accused of illegally possessing less than 2 grams of hydrocodone without a prescription, the sentencing range is 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If the amount he's possessing is 2 to 28 grams, then he's looking at 1 to 5 years in prison. It is a probatable offense depending on the circumstances surrounding the case. If the defendant is accused of illegally possessing over 28 grams or equal to 28 grams of hydrocodone, it shall be considered a possession with intent to distribute, which then has increased sentencing ranges of either 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 years at hard labor, depending on how much hydrocodone it is. In distribution of hydrocodone, the sentencing range is going to be either 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, depending if it's 28 grams or more. Ketamine is a Schedule III drug in Louisiana. It is also known as Bump, Special K, Vitamin K. Ketamine is a strong prescription anesthesia used mainly during surgical procedures for both humans and animals. It may also be used in pain management or as a treatment for depression. So let's discuss the penalties for illegal possession of ketamine in Louisiana. Illegal possession of ketamine is a felony charge that carries 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. This is a probatable offense depending on the criminal record of the defendant and the facts surrounding the case. Possession with intent to distribute ketamine, distribution of ketamine, and manufacture of ketamine are felonies as well that carry 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $15,000. LSD is a Schedule I drug in Louisiana. It is also known as acid, stamps, microdots. LSD stands for lysergic acid dithylamide. LSD is a powerful psychedelic drug known for its profound psychological and hallucinatory effects. It's mainly used as a recreational drug, but has been used clinically in the past and researched for psychiatric treatment. LSD is typically sold on a substance such as blotter paper or small pieces of candy. Larger amounts are often sold in liquid form. Let's discuss the penalties for legal possession of LSD in Louisiana. If you illegally possess up to 2 grams of LSD, you're looking at up to 2 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If the amount you're accused of possessing is in between 2 and 28 grams, then you're looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If you're accused of possessing illegally 28 grams or more, that shall be considered as possession with intent to distribute, which amps up the penalties to either 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, depending on the amount that you have. So it can still be possession with intent to distribute if you have less than 28 grams, if the facts support that you are possessing it with the intent to distribute. And then distribution is going to be 1 to 20 at hard labor with a fine of up to $50,000. Marijuana in Louisiana is a Schedule I drug. Marijuana refers only to the organic plant material, whereas THC and CBD are extracts or compounds processed from the raw plant. Marijuana has both recreational and medical uses. While it is habit-forming, it is not technically addictive in the clinical sense. Marijuana has undergone lots of recent legislation here in Louisiana. Specifically, doctors can now prescribe or recommend marijuana to treat certain diseases and disorders. And the most recent legislation now allows the raw smokable form to be prescribed, which is going to lead to a big change in the way police officers do stops and searches, basically making Louisiana a throughway for drug trafficking. So let's look at the penalties here for illegal possession of marijuana. When I discuss the penalties, I'm discussing illegal possession rather than legal possession, which legal possession would be possession of marijuana with a prescription. So possession of marijuana, first offense of 14 grams or less, is now punishable by a $100 fine. So can't get jail time on this charge. In fact, if a defendant is getting a charge for by a police officer, the police officer must give him a summons or a ticket. He cannot book the defendant. Now, if the defendant has in his possession more than 14 grams of marijuana, then he's looking at 0 to 6 months in parish jail and a fine of up to $500. So 14 grams is the threshold. And possession of marijuana, second offense, when it's more than 14 grams, 0 to 6 months. 14 grams or less, it's still going to be a first offense. Possession of marijuana, third offense, is if there's more than 14 grams, 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor, and a fine of up to $2,500. Fourth offense, more than 14 grams, 0 to 8 years. And these are felony charges. Third offense and fourth offense are felonies. Prior convictions of possession of marijuana can only be used to enhance the new charge to make it either a second, third, or fourth offense if the date of offense for the new charge is within 2 years from the completion date of probation or the sentence from the prior. So if there is more than 2 years between completion of the previous sentence and the date of offense of the new case, then that previous conviction cannot be used to enhance the new charge. 2.5 pounds or more, then it becomes possession with intent to distribute marijuana. These are much more serious charges. With possession with intent to distribute marijuana and distribution of marijuana, then the defendant's looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $50,000. If the defendant is accused of having 2.5 pounds or more and it's possession with intent to distribute or distribution, then it's 1 to 20. Methadone is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. Methadone is a synthetic opioid primarily known for treating opioid dependence through maintenance, therapy, or tapering down. Methadone is usually used in clinics to treat heroin dependence, to get people off of the heroin. However, it typically just creates a methadone addiction. Because it may be less addictive than traditional opioids, methadone is also used as an analgesic for the treatment of chronic pain. Methadone is a synthesized opioid drug made exclusively in commercial pharmaceutical labs. Let's talk about the penalties for methadone. So for possession of methadone of less than 2 grams, it is a felony charge. It carries up to 2 years with or without hard labor, a fine of up to $5,000. Now this is illegal possession of methadone. You can also possess it legally with a prescription, but we're discussing the illegal possession without a prescription. So if the defendant has in between 2 to 28 grams, then he's looking at a potential sentence of 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor. If the defendant is accused of having 28 grams or more, it becomes a possession with intent to distribute methadone. So possession with intent to distribute methadone can either be 28 grams more, or it can be less than 28 grams if there are other facts that the prosecutor feels like he could prove to show that the defendant was in possession with intent to distribute it. Therefore, he's either going to be looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor, or 1 to 20 at hard labor. And the production or manufacturing methadone charge down here at the bottom, 10 to 30 at hard labor, you just don't even see any of that. Methamphetamine is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. Methamphetamine is also known as meth, ice, glass, crystal, crank. Methamphetamine is a powerful synthetic stimulant that is used mainly as a recreational drug due to its aphrodisiac and euphoriant properties. Generally speaking, methamphetamine refers to the home-cooked or meth lab street drug found in crystal form, while amphetamine typically refers to the legitimately manufactured pharmaceutical products such as Adderall and Vyvanse. So let's talk about the penalties for illegal possession of methamphetamine. If the defendant's accused of possessing illegally less than 2 grams of methamphetamine, he's looking at a felony of 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor and a fine up to $5,000. And if the defendant's got 2 to 28 grams, he's looking at 1 to 5 years. If he's in possession of 28 grams or more, it automatically is considered a possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine, which is punishable by 1 to 20 years at hard labor. If the defendant has less than 28 grams, it could still be a possession with intent to distribute if there are other supporting facts to show that he actually possessed the drug to distribute it. Production or manufacturing methamphetamine carries 10 to 30 years. Oxycodone is a Schedule II drug in Louisiana. Oxycodone is known as Oxy, Roxy, Slams, Oxycontin, Percocet, Perks. Oxycodone is a semi-synthetic opioid medication that is prescribed for moderate to severe pain. It's commonly abused and highly addictive. Producing euphoria similar to other opioids, rampant oxycodone overprescribing and abuse has evolved into heroin abuse. And it is the center of the current opioid epidemic in the United States. Withdrawal symptoms related to oxycodone abuse addiction can be severe, and relapse is common. Oxycodone is a synthesized opioid drug made exclusively in commercial pharmaceutical labs. Let's discuss the penalties for illegal possession of oxycodone without prescription. If the defendant is accused of possessing less than 2 grams of oxycodone, he's looking at a felony of 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor and a fine up to $5,000. If he's in possession of 2 to 28 grams, then he's looking at 1 to 5 years. If he's in possession of 28 grams or more, it should be considered a possession with intent to distribute oxycodone, which amps up the penalties to 1 to 20 years at hard labor. He could also be charged with possession with intent to distribute oxycodone if he has less than 28 grams, if there are other facts that the prosecutor feels like he could prove to show that he was possessing that oxycodone with the intent to distribute it. Then he's looking at 1 to 10 years. Psilocybin is a Schedule I drug in Louisiana. It is known as mushrooms, caps, shrooms, magic. While it may be cooked down into a tea or other drink, psilocybin mushrooms are very commonly dried out and sold or consumed whole. A mushroom containing psilocybin is one of the only CDS that is commonly sold or possessed in its original organic state, similar to marijuana. So let's discuss the penalties for illegal possession of psilocybin. If the defendant's accused of possessing less than 2 grams, he's looking at a felony of 0 to 2 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. Possession of psilocybin of more than 2 grams, he's looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $5,000. If he's accused of possession 28 grams or more, then it's considered possession with intent to distribute, in which case he'd be looking at 1 to 20 years at hard labor. He could still possess less than that and be charged with possession with intent to distribute, in which case he'd be looking at 1 to 10. And these go for distribution as well. And the aggregate weight is what it determines the weight. So all the shrooms added up together is what determines if it's less than 28 grams, more than 28 grams. Synthetic cannabinoids are a Schedule I drug in Louisiana. Although recent law enforcement efforts have curtailed the distribution of synthetic cannabinoids in retail smoke shops, it has retained some popularity among prison inmates and other subgroups. Liquid versions can be sprayed on letters or other paper products and sent into prison facilities without detection. Synthetic cannabinoids are known as Mojo, K2, Spice, Syncan. So let's discuss the penalties for possession of synthetic cannabinoids in Louisiana. So for first offense, the defendant's looking at a misdemeanor of 0 to 6 months in parish prison and a fine of up to $500. Second offense becomes a felony, which carries up to 5 years with or without hard labor and a fine up to $2,000. Third offense, felony, 0 to 20 years at hard labor. If the defendant is accused of having 2.5 pounds or more and becomes possession with intent to distribute synthetic cannabinoids, in which case he's looking at 1 to 20 years at hard labor. If he has less than that, if he has less than 2.5 pounds, then he's looking at 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine of up to $50,000. Tramadol is a Schedule IV drug in Louisiana. It is known as Ultras, Oxylite, or chill pills. Tramadol is a narcotic-like pain reliever which is commonly combined with acetaminophen, Tylenol, and used to treat moderate to severe pain. It can be habit-forming and if misused can cause serious side effects. So illegal possession of Tramadol without a prescription is a felony. It carries 1 to 5 years with or without hard labor and a fine up to $5,000. Distribution of Tramadol or possession with intent to distribute Tramadol is a felony that carries a potential sentencing range of 1 to 10 years with or without hard labor and a fine up to $15,000. These are probatable offenses depending on the defendant's prior criminal record, also any other aggravating or mitigating factors surrounding the case. I hope this video helps you understand the Louisiana drug laws a little bit better. If you need an attorney to help you with a drug charge, feel free to give me a call. I'd be happy to help.